I spend a lot of time trying to dissuade close friends from getting into business with each other. And a lot of that has to come from, uh, when I was interviewing co-founders for the book and really talking to people about their experiences. I did happen to see a lot of friendships destroyed over business. And it just was very tragic because, it takes a long time to build a strong friendship, and there's a lot of investment in that relationship. And unfortunately, the business relationship versus a personal friendship relationship, they're two very different beasts. And if the founders or the co-founders are not prepared for that, or even aware that this new relationship will shift, then they're kind of caught off guard, and it can be really destructive. So, it can be really difficult. And so, I tend to try and dissuade people to do that. I think for Stephen and I, we went in very conscious and intentional about putting our friendship first, even over the business. And we were able to do that because our early companies didn't grow like they were acquired before they scaled too large. So we were able to prioritize our friendship and really navigate the ups and downs of entrepreneurship with that lens. But when you have a business that's scaling quickly and growing exponentially, it's much more difficult to prioritize the friendship, and you need to prioritize the business. So.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Promethean Leaders. I'm your host, Samad Raza, and today we are thrilled to have Tanis Jorge with us. Tanis is a renowned entrepreneur, author, and co-founder expert who has significantly contributed to the startup ecosystem. She is known for her insightful book, The Co-Founder's Handbook, which has become an essential guide for entrepreneurs navigating the complex dynamic of co-founder relationships. Tanis has a rich history of building successful companies and helping others do the same. With background in technology, business, she has co-founded multiple ventures, including the notable Trulioo, a global identity verification system. Her experience has provided her with wealth of knowledge on intricacies of co-founders' relationships, which she now shares through her writing, speaking engagements, and mentorship. Tanis, it's really a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. It's a beautiful sunny day right now, so I'm excited to finally be able to get out and enjoy that sunshine this weekend. So it's good.
Yeah, and I'm holding you here to record the session while the sun is out.
That's
So
okay.
I want to say thank you so much for taking out time to be with us.
Awesome.
So I want to start by asking you, could you share a bit about your journey and what inspired you to become an entrepreneur and co-founder?
Yeah. I was very lucky to make a great friendship with someone when I was in high school. My dear friend Stephen and I were friends right from day one of grade 8. And we had lockers beside each other for 5 years. And over that time, we built a really incredible friendship. We did a lot of school projects together, and we just really ended up hitting it off so well. We were best friends. And so while we never really thought of doing business together, we did ultimately end up laying a foundation for our working relationship over those 5 years. We learned, what made each other tick. We knew what got each other annoyed. We knew how we could complement one another when we were doing projects together. And so we didn't really know it, but we were actually building our working relationship that would come later in the future. So after high school, Stephen had an idea for a business, and he asked me if I wanted to be part of it. And so while there wasn't really a lot of thought that went into it, it was kind of spontaneous. I never necessarily thought of being an entrepreneur specifically. I guess it just our fates came together in a way that it was natural that we would end up doing something together because we really enjoyed doing things.
That's very interesting because like I have heard so many stories about getting in business with your best friend and then like it doesn't end well and you lose friendship. Either you can save business or you can save friendship. So I want to know like how did you navigate your like early days as a co-founder and like manage that personal relationship, like your friendships. So it's like how do you separate business from personal relationship at this?
Yeah, it's actually ironic. I spend a lot of time trying to dissuade close friends from getting into business with each other. And a lot of that has to come from, uh, when I was interviewing co-founders for the book and really talking to people about their experiences, I did happen to see a lot of friendships destroyed over business. And it just was very tragic because, it takes a long time to build a strong friendship, and there's a lot of investment in that relationship. And unfortunately, the business relationship versus a personal friendship relationship, they're two very different beasts. And if the founders or the co-founders are not prepared for that, or even aware that this new relationship will shift, then they're kind of caught off guard, and it can be really destructive. So, yeah, it can be really difficult. And so, I tend to try and dissuade people to do that. I think for Stephen and I, we went in very conscious and intentional about putting our friendship first, even over the business. And we were able to do that because our early companies didn't grow like they were acquired before they scaled too large. So we were able to prioritize our friendship and really navigate the ups and downs of entrepreneurship with that lens. But when you have a business that's scaling quickly and growing exponentially, it's much more difficult to prioritize the friendship, and you need to prioritize the business. So, yeah, it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, it takes years to build a relationship and trust, but moments to ruin everything.
That's so true. So true.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, when you are working with a friend in a business, right? And they come up with ideas and things that they want to implement, and then you are like, oh, should I be like polite and say, no, this is not gonna work? Should I be aggressive? Like, and then like you leave like in between, you leave communication in between that, like, oh, they might pick up and this is like, okay, yeah, this is not a great idea. And
Mm.
then it starts to build up conflicts
Mhm.
because you are on a different tangent, you are like thinking about different thing, and they are like, oh yeah, yeah, oh, I don't need to ask them, they agree with me, like, oh, we are best friends, they will just agree, I don't need to like consult,
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. My goal is always to catch co-founder partnerships before they formalize or early on. And when I get that opportunity, I really explain to them how important it is to be very transparent, very authentic, very, um, uh, just very authentic in their partnership, and to really share exactly how you feel. And then to be prepared to receive conversations from your co-founder in a way that is mature, and also filled with grace, understanding that we're both just people navigating a roller coaster. Because entrepreneurship, man, it is a ride. Right? And so you have people who are going through this ride with their own internal struggles personally, but they have to do it with somebody else. So I often tell people, right from the get-go, you have to be so honest with one another and really share how you feel and really talk together and decide how you're going to navigate communication and how you're going to navigate decision making. So that's really, really important. And that will carry through all the way to the very end, when at the end, because everyone's going to exit a partnership at some point.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's because you're IPOing and, the business has exploded and everything is great. It's not always a negative to exit a partnership. Sometimes partners will come and buy another one out because one wants to carry on and grow the company, and the other one, they've done what they want to do or can do within the organization. So it's not always a bad thing. But all through that whole process from start to finish, it's so important that everybody really think through and communicate properly with their co-founder. It's a skill. It's something you have to hone, and you have to be intentional.
I do want to talk a bit more about conflict resolution and communication. But before that, I just have this thought like you have a personal relationship with a person, right? This is your friend. So how do you keep that personal relationship out of the profession? It's like every time, like people who do not even have personal relationship, they take things personally itself. So when you actually have a personal relationship and you're working with a co-founder, how do you actually not take it personally and be professional and then carry on, like take care of the business? Because like I think when you're working as an entrepreneur and trying to build a business, then business comes first.
Yeah. So there's two ways that I often tell people to how you can handle or mitigate conflict. So the first and most important one is to actually be able to identify how, as co-founders, you are going to navigate those decisions that you have to do. So that's the first and foremost, so utterly important. So it's actually sitting down and talking with one another and deciding, how are we going to make decisions? In what ways do we as founders communicate best individually? For some people, they need to have facts delivered to them visually, whereas another person might need to be tactile. It has to be something that they can touch. So it's really understanding each other, who they are individually, and navigating who each other is. That's so completely important. And then the other side of conflict is to also identify, well, I'll put it this way. When you are starting a co-founder partnership, you absolutely need to constantly keep at the top of mind that you are in this together, and that one person's success means the other person's success. And you got to take into account the golden rule. What you want done to you, you need to do to the other person. And it always has to be at the forefront. And I think if people can think about that, they know that the other person's not, twisting their mustache thinking, how do I hurt this person on the other side? That's not typically the case. Oftentimes when issues arise, it's not intentional. It's an accident. It's a tone was said wrong, or a word was chosen improperly, or an action was done by accident, or just not meant to hurt. And I think if people really sit down and realize my co-founders on my team, no matter what, they're actually not trying to hurt me. They're not trying to hurt the business. They're just doing their life. That's such an important way to navigate everyday life. And then the second thing that I also tell people to do as well is to really make the business the focal point. I know I mentioned that Stephen and I put our friendship as a priority, but I find that co-founder partnerships that make the business and its success as the focal point, then they can make decisions on a more factual basis as opposed to an emotional basis. So the idea is what's best for the company, not what's best for you. And that's the difference between, say, a marriage and a co-founder partnership. In a marriage, you want to make sure the other person's happy. Whereas in a partnership, you want to make sure the business is happy. And that's a great way to mitigate emotions out of everything that you're doing in your partnership.
I totally agree with you. Business needs to be taken care of first in that sense. And I think that would avoid quite a bit of conflicts if you both co-founder, or like as many co-founder, they put business needs first, and they want to just have the best for business, not like, oh, how is going to benefit me, or if someone is trying to basically screw me over kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how you succeed in both in business and in the co-founder relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you could take any decision or any situation that arises in business. Should we I want to hire a particular person for one of my departments, and the other person maybe doesn't like that person. The question then comes, what's best for the company? And what, is this person the right person for that job? And so if you run everything through that filter, it really depersonalizes those decisions that pop up in business.
Yeah, so it's like, will this help business achieve its goal or not?
Exactly.
So I want to ask, like, we already talked about few of the challenges that co-founder face, but like, what are the most common challenges like you have heard co-founders talking about?
Yeah. Well, again, oftentimes it's about dealing with, decisions where co-founders disagree. That's a big key. So really walking through, how do you actually come up with a final decision that everybody is as happy as they can be. So that's one really key piece. Another one is contemplating, again, that exit. Helping co-founders realize that there comes a point when one founder may want to go. And so it's having those honest conversations throughout the growth of the company, and sharing when you think, hey, this is getting to the point where I might want to exit. And instead of looking at that as a negative, looking at that situation as something that's inevitable. So let's plan for it. And let's make sure that it's done in a way that keeps the business intact and keeps the partnership friendly, that it ends up being something that actually ends up being a win for everybody all around. So those are two things that I tend to see in the co-founder partnership being a real struggle for a lot of people.
I think you mentioned a really interesting point, because it brings me to my next question, actually. These kind of conversation, in my opinion, needs to happen very early on in the partnership.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the conversations that I have seen co-founder put off till they start raising money, actually, is like, who owns how much of the equity?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the equity structure? What's the vesting structure? And like, I have actually seen people not even knowing like what vesting is and what cliff is, and then they're like, oh yeah, let's go partnership, and then like we have a cool product, and then they go into pitch, and then when the judge asks like, okay, what's the structure here, and then they're like totally blank.
It's a real thing. It is actually a real thing. Or it's just a default. Oh, we're going to be 50-50. And I think, you really nailed it. One of the things that I've come to realize is that there are so many conversations that need to be had between co-founders. Oftentimes, I think entrepreneurs don't prioritize the co-founder partnership. They focus on, how are we going to build a great product? How are we going to fundraise? How are we going to, scale our services? That's the focus. But what they don't realize is along that way, there's more than one person who's going to make those decisions. And so many conversations have to be had to get them to the point that they can make a truly, appropriate decision at whatever various time in their business. And so I definitely think that it's extremely valuable that co-founders talk about, what am I bringing to the table? What are you bringing to the table? How much time commitment are you going to do? What capital are we going to put up? What is our roles and responsibilities? What happens if, no one's there to open the doors at 8 a.m. in the morning? Who's going to go in and open those doors? There's so many questions that need to be asked and decided upon as early as possible. I call it, digging your well before you're thirsty. Having these conversations and making some decisions before the fire of the moment is making you make a hasty response to the situation. So yeah, there's a lot of conversations that feed into equity. That you have to know before you actually dole out. And very few co-founders ask those serious questions.
Yeah, for sure, because as you said, the default is 50-50, and like oh
Yeah.
yeah, 50-50, we are best friends, we're gonna go 50-50, and then one realizes, oh, but I'm bringing this much to the table and
Yeah.
I'm working this hard and the idea is mine, I came up with it. And then
Mm-hmm.
just basically in back of their mind it starts to build conflict and
Yeah.
like basically
Resentment.
resentment, yes, resentment, and then things start to derail because then you're not thinking about the business as we spoke earlier. Like you have to
That's
think
right.
about the business. Then they start thinking about themselves like, oh, that person is just trying to screw me over. They think I'm a pushover because like we are 50-50.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. It's like I think some people might think that oh we are exaggerating, but this actually is
No.
very real.
Oh,
Happens
it's
all the time.
all the time. Yeah, I think so. Statistically, 65% of business partnerships fail because of issues between the founders. That's a massive amount. And what that comes down to is that these founders are having this underlying resentment for whatever reason. And there's so many different ways to derail a partnership. Unfortunately, I wish there was only one or two, but there's so many ways that a partnership can be derailed. And so it really is important that founders put a spotlight on their partnership and don't just leave it to the fates to handle. It's really important that on a daily, weekly, monthly, annually timeline, you are actually purposefully working on and trying to improve your partnership at all times.
Yeah, no, definitely. That 60% of failure rate because of partnership conflict, that's huge. Like I
It's
was not expecting it to be that big.
Yeah, very few times do people bring that up as a possible reason for their business's demise. And so it's a lot of times it's very shocking. And so, but then it allows people to understand why we're so adamant that you really need to put the time and effort into your partnership. Because it's like the Trojan horse. You don't know it comes into your business and you have no idea that it's actually in there and can really cause so much damage.
Yeah, building resentment without you knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, one other thing that you mentioned was technical founders. So basically, people end up building partnership just based on like, oh, I'm trying to build this app and I need a CTO who
Mm-hmm.
has Python coding skills or Java, like basically like coding skills, and I need that. And then you just find, oh yeah, you can do code. Oh yeah, can you be my co-founder? Like
Yeah.
you know that happens a lot, right?
Uh-huh.
Just like that, in my opinion, does not create a good synergy between
Yeah.
partners because you have not really touched your partnership in a deeper level, in the personal level, because you'll be seeing each other, you'll be giving each other feedback, working together. And if you can't meet on the other than like a technical basis, then it might not be a successful partnership in
Mhm.
the end.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are so many. I talk to, and it isn't just in the technical space, it's in any industry at all. You know, you have a restaurateur who thinks, okay, my partner should be a chef, you know, or someone starting a construction company thinks that their partner should be in sales or a carpenter, whatever, a
Hmm.
skilled trade. You know, people always think specifically about the skill set, but there are so many other important factors to consider, such as um, you know, what is the personality type, what is their conflict style, what is their goal in their business. Is this somebody who's thinking something long term and legacy that their kids can join down the road, or is this someone who's thinking, hey, I just want to build this company and flip it in a year? You know, there's so
Quick
many
money.
more important questions to ask. Well, skill set is valuable, but that's not just the thing that people should be focusing on. There are so many other important aspects to consider and put into that factor to make sure that that foundership is the right foundation for that business that they're building.
uh, it reminds me, I think you have a co-founder assessment on your website, right?
That's
That people
correct.
can take.
Yeah. Yeah. So the co founder assessment is just about to launch, actually. And that is actually its goal. So the goal is to help people first find out what it is that makes them as an entrepreneur tick. What is it that they bring to the table? Because until you identify, you know, what it is that makes you up and help, and before you can understand what decisions you're going to make based on who you are and your goals and output, it's going to be really difficult to really truly decide who is that person I need to bring on. So the co-founder assessment begins as a deep dive into who you are as an entrepreneur. And then from there, it highlights and helps identify these gaps or these opportunities where you can explore those traits and factors that you need to look for based on the knowledge you've gained from the assessment. So that's the core piece of that. It's really meant. The great thing is that it's a two-pronged win. As I say, you really understand you as an entrepreneur, and then you also can help identify what this co-founder needs to be, and that's exactly what the assessment does. On top of it, it also provides so many questions that you need to talk about, so many conversations that need to be had so that you are prepared for whatever your partnership and your business throws at you. You can start to set up these expectations of how you are going to work together as partners, and then how you want that journey as partners to look going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that assessment is going to be very helpful for many founders who are trying to get into a co-founder relationship and building a business, because if you can catch these kind of thing on at very early stage, it's very easy to address it. When you start scaling or like building product and then it happens, then it just basically delays everything. Either you shut down, it delays, you don't have runway anymore. It creates a lot more conflicts.
Yeah. Although I do say anybody who's in a partnership, there's no time like the present to actually better understand yourself and your partner. It'll actually make you a better business person because you'll understand deeper why you make the decisions that you make and why you go in the directions that you do. And it also helps you to mitigate conflict because you're going to have a better understanding of why you and your co-founder say the things that you do. Why do you have these habits in the day-to-day in the office? Why are they doing that? Or why do they not get involved in this part of the business? Or why do they shy away from that? Or why do they drop the ball here always? Or just all these different really important factors that when you understand the underlying reason for them, you have a better understanding of why those decisions are made. And it really improves the partnership relationship. It builds trust instead of tearing it down. So knowledge is so important. And we really focus on a lot of the key factors that need to be understood about one another.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if you can understand your partner to a deeper level, you start building trust. And that's some of the really good ways to actually start building trust in this relationship, and then it helps the business as well.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Do you think like you would be able to share a little bit more about how someone can build trust?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to communication. Communication is the foundation of a strong partnership, and not just communication for the sake of communication, but with a long-term vision attached to it. So it comes down to like touching base on a regular basis and sharing what it is that you're working on. You know, a lot of co-founders are working in different departments. And as much as they come together and talk about various things, sometimes those minute details of what they're working on or the struggles they're having, those things, conversations fall through the cracks. So I often explain that it's really valuable to have your co-founder really know what you're working on and hear your struggles and hear your challenges so that nothing is left to the imagination. You know, it's really important that expectations are communicated. And so when someone says, hey, I'm hiring someone for my department right now, I'm struggling with finding the right person, don't worry, I have it coming, but it's just not, we haven't found the right person yet. What that does is it may help their co-founder who's going, gosh, why aren't we building this portion of the product yet? When are they going to hire them? What have they been doing? It really stops that imagination portion from happening. So daily communication, weekly sit downs between founders to just share their life, even share what's going on in their personal life. That's another really important piece. This is what's happening at home right now. We'd be surprised just how much your personal life affects your professional life. And so we have to talk about that as partners.
No, I totally agree that when you're not communicating, when you're not updating each other on things that are going on in your life, other person might starts to go into a spiral thinking where they're like, oh, why they are not doing, as you said, like why they are not doing this and that, and then they starts to build the story and the background and gives a substance, and then every time they see you, they perceive you through that story
Yeah,
that they have built up.
absolutely. That's so true. And it's so sad because there comes a point when it becomes very, very difficult to unwind that story. And that's why it's so imperative that partners really dive into things like the assessment so that they can avoid these moments of misunderstanding that can pop up throughout
Mm.
on a daily basis even.
Yeah, I think like human mind is a very interesting technology, I would say, because it loves curiosity to such level that when it doesn't find answer, it starts to make up answers.
Absolutely. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. And the thing about, the snowball effect is that when the co-founders are struggling, the team recognizes that, as do your investors, as can your clients, as can your suppliers. And so there really needs to be a united front in those co-founder partnerships. You know that when you see partners who are strong and they talk about one another with trust and really see each other in a way that is impressive and they feel positive about one another, it actually invokes positivity into the actual business model that they're in. Whereas if you have one co-founder kind of talking about the other one or putting them down, you really get this inner feeling like, oh, is this company okay? So again, just on the purely selfish reasons of ensuring that your team and your investors and your clients feel confident in your business, it becomes very important to build that partnership to a strong level.
Yeah, I think like when you actually have teams and departments built up, and then those team members starts to see conflicts among founders. First, they start losing the trust in the company. Then
Yeah,
they start
absolutely.
to basically find a lifeboat. They start to build up their backup plan.
Yeah,
And while doing that, I also think that what ends up happening is that if co-founders have their own department and they are like running their own department head, then those departments become divided, and then they are like uh, at each other. Basically, they are like, oh yeah, because like they are not giving us this because founders are having trouble, and they are just trying to get at us because like their founder doesn't like ours, and like that just basically like they start to build their own stories. The conflict starts to grow while those employees are also like already trying to find a lifeboat to basically find some other stability, because we all love a stability. Like
yes.
even as an entrepreneur, we love taking risks, but even in those risks we try to find some level of stability to keep us going.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I will say, because sometimes it can sound very negative to have a co-founder, like people go, why? Why would even anybody want to be in a co-founder partnership? I can tell you what happens when it goes well. And when it goes well, it's not 1+1 = 2. It's 1+1 equals 50. The strength of two united people who are on par together and the same vision is so powerful. And so the other side of it as well is that if you can figure out how to be each other's cheerleader and support person, I always found when Stephen and I were struggling, when one of us was down, the other one was usually up enough that they could help the other one, and vice versa. And so to have this person who truly understands the journey you're on, even someone as close as your spouse who's so close to one co-founder, even they don't truly see what's happening in that business, even though they're close relationship with the co-founder, they don't really know. So that co-founder relationship can be so powerful and so intimate, and such an important piece of, like you said, stability through this crazy journey that somebody might be on, that it is such a gift. And the bond that can be created between co-founders that have this experience together in a positive way. I definitely have had co-founders say that their partnership was one of the greatest human relationships that they had in their entire life. And it can be so beautiful and so powerful and so life enriching that I would never want to discourage somebody from trying. As long as they're intentional, as long as they do the work to make sure that co-founder partnership is at the forefront, it can be one of the greatest experiences. Even if your business fails, you can turn around at the end and say, yeah, but I have this person or these people that we did this together. And just the joy of journeying with these people and strengthening that bond was worth whatever the outcome was. So
Yeah.
I don't want to discourage it. It can be incredible. It really, truly can.
I know, like you can toast to that friendship and relationship that you end up building along the journey that you took and all
Yeah.
the experience that you gained. Because,
Absolutely.
like, yeah, those things matter. And I totally agree with you. Like, if you have a great co-founder, if you end up building great relationship, that would be one of the most powerful tools that you would have in your arsenal as an entrepreneur, as running your business. Because running a business or just even starting a business, a company, is not easy.
No.
Like, you will find 1,000 people telling you how it's going to fail before someone comes to you and say, oh, this is how it's going to actually succeed.
That's
You
right.
know, it's like you have to first go through all of that. And when
Yeah.
you were talking about like the someone who has your back, someone who basically cares for you, and then basically um, gives you good feedback, and also like have good in mind for you, you end up feeling that power to propel
Yes.
yourself forward. It
Yeah.
reminded me of a story I was listening to a book, and in the book, I don't remember the name right now of the book, but like in that book, the person talked about a story, and it was about the two frogs who fell in a deep hole.
Right.
And then they both started to jump to get out of the hole. And then the other frogs came along, and they started to say to those frogs that, like, hey, the hole is too deep, you won't be able to make it, you probably it's best for you to just make peace with it and like go out in peace and just stop trying. It's not gonna work, just stop trying. So one frog gives up and dies in the hole. The other frogs keeps on jumping and they start to say louder and louder, like, hey, this is not gonna work, you probably gonna die, you don't exhaust yourself, go out in peace, just make peace with it and just chill around until you die. But he just kept jumping, the other frog. And then suddenly he actually was able to get out of the hole by jumping. And other frogs came to him and said, like, hey, what happened? How did you actually made it? And he was like, they were like, oh, we were telling you that it's not gonna work, and we told you everything, but like you kept jumping. Like, how did you make it? And he was like, I'm actually deaf, I couldn't hear what you said. And it was for me, it was too far for me to actually read your lips. So I thought you were like wishing me all the best and wishing me all the good things, and like you were like basically motivating me to actually get out of it. So I took all those motivation that you sent my way, and then I jumped out of it. So
Right.
basically, like, not taking bad feedback is one thing that co-founders should learn. The other thing is that the people you surround with, who actually motivate you, who actually inspire you, and who wants best for you,
Yeah.
and when they see you making a bad decision, they come to you and like, hey, don't do this, good advice, and then put you on the right path. Those people are the one that will help you succeed, and co-founder can be one of those people. So you have to
Absolutely.
be like that. It's like you against the world, basically.
That's it. It's so true. It really is. You very well said. That's very true. That's very
Thank
true.
you. So it brings me to our next conversation, which is basically how co-founders handle success and failures.
Yeah.
You know, like both can be good and bad, I would
Yeah.
say, because when success gets to your head, it ruins relationships as well. You
Mhm.
might start thinking, oh yeah, I did that, I worked so hard, I put late nights, but like the other person didn't, and this success is for me, I made it happen, but he's taking credit for it. Like those kind of things create resentment. And then failure, same way, oh, I worked so hard, that person didn't work hard, and like it's because of them that we failed, and I am just so angry. You know, these kind
Yeah.
of things, both success and failure can be good and bad.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's so true. I often hear the term, self-made man, self-made person. And, I think anyone who falls into that philosophy is probably going to set themselves up for some struggles down the road because nobody's a self-made anything. There's always a team behind them and there's always somebody who's helped them to achieve what they've achieved. I think that we as entrepreneurs have to be very honest about why we have succeeded and failed at our ventures in our life. Success comes oftentimes from hard work and tenacity and perseverance. But there's also an element of right timing and a little bit of luck. Luck is when opportunity and preparedness meet. But there is times when you go, okay, I built this business at a very unique time, or I happened to meet the right person at this one moment. So there's having a real honest understanding that we get to where we are from our hard work and from our mistakes as well. Sometimes we fail because we make poor decisions. And sometimes it's because people around us have made poor decisions, but we really don't do it alone in a silo. And so I think for no matter if you're in a co-founder partnership or if you're a solopreneur, I think it's very, very important to be humble and to really recognize that it's your team, it's the circumstances surrounding you that will contribute to your success or your failure. And to not just put the weight of responsibility solely on yourself. Because I think if you have a venture that fails, so many people are destroyed over it. They see themselves as a fail and they don't always recognize that, this is something that's like a separate entity. It's not actually who they are as a person that fails, but the same applies for success as well. Sometimes people think, oh, I'm just brilliant and I'm amazing. And in many ways they are, but in many ways as well, they couldn't have got to where they are without some pretty incredible people or circumstances that came their way. So I think that's just a philosophy that one needs to live by. And then hopefully that could permeate the partnership as well. That recognize that, like I said, 1 and 1 sometimes just makes 50. And so you can't always presume that it's because of your work or your mistakes that your business succeeded or failed.
No, I totally agree with you. As you said, your success is not yours alone, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think even one person in the whole world believed in you,
Mm-hmm.
and you knew that they believed in you, then it's some credit to them as well. Because
Absolutely.
they stood by you when the whole world was against you. They still
That's
kept
right.
believing in you.
That's
That's a
right.
huge thing. You
Yeah.
might think like, oh, they just believe. No, they didn't just believe. They
Yeah.
stood with you when
Yeah.
everyone was against you.
Yeah.
That's a
That's
huge
right.
thing. That takes
It is.
courage to do
It
so.
does. Absolutely.
You need to be humble. You need to think when you start to take too much pride in everything, then you start to lose focus. Then you start to make mistake, because when you build a team, a business runs with a team, and whole team comes together to scale your business, to make it successful. They all believe in the business. So it's like it never is your own.
That's so true. Yeah, absolutely.
And on the failure, when you're talking about how failure affects and how people take things a bit personally and start sulking too much, I started to remember this quote. I don't remember it exactly how it goes, but like the gist of it is that when you fail, take the night and cry it off. But as soon as the sun comes up, you're going to stand up and try again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as an entrepreneur,